to the show, everybody. I am so excited to be back in the studio interviewing new guests and new experts so that we can share all the toddler goodness with you. Today, I have Gretchen Camp here with me. Thank you so much, Gretchen.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk toddler stuff with you.
Oh, toddler talk. It's my
Yes,
favorite.
toddler. Yeah, same. I love it.
Wow. So you and I actually have very similar kind of parallel journeys in this world. I will let you, in your own words, share, what the world of toddlers has meant to you and how it's brought you here.
I started out just kind of not knowing what I wanted to do back in the day. My parents were like, "You're going to college." And I'm like, "Okay." And so I landed in education and I started teaching first grade and I had a love for teaching. And then fast forward a number of years, I landed in early childhood education and I started teaching with our state grant preschool program in Iowa. And I taught early childhood. I taught pre K and K for a number of years. And it was interesting because I didn't know how much I would fall in love with the littles. And that's just how I ended up. I ended up teaching pre K and it was magic and I loved it and I did it for about 15 years with the school district and it's
Wow.
just it was one of those things where you don't realize how much of an impact you're going to make until you start doing it, and then it became the connection with the families, and that's just where my love came, for empowering parents, really.
So I love that that is kind of that gateway for you because when I walked into my first classroom, felt very strongly, okay, I'm ready. Like, I know how to write a lesson plan, even a little itty bitty baby one. Like, I know how to do this
Yeah.
and I'm ready to teach. And I learned two things very quickly. One, those kids were not ready to learn from me. They needed me to show up and build a relationship with them
Yes.
before there was any learning involved. And two, I was there to teach the parents as much as I was there to teach the kids.
Yes, yes, yes. That's so true. We think that we're just going to go in and we're going to start teaching because that's what they teach us in college. You know, we've got these lesson plans and it looks so great. Well, you can throw that out the window because it's just about getting down to their level and connecting with them and, letting them know that you love them. And it's that whole connection and safety piece for weeks before you even really start thinking about, I got to teach the academics.
Absolutely. Yeah, so one of the things that I wanted to explore with you is this idea of teachers as an extension of the nuclear family.
Mm,
Uh, how did that I'm sure very quickly on you realized that was an essential role that we had that nobody taught us was gonna be the case.
right.
Um, and how did you lean into that? And with the families who I mean, with the heads up families that come in and say, "Hey, we are noticing
Yeah.
this and this." Those are the families who are ready to hear it, ready to work with you, ready to learn. What about the families who didn't really know what they didn't know, and it was a real challenge at home and you were seeing it reflected at school?
Well, I love that you said they didn't know what they didn't know. I would say it's interesting because my career is kind of divided into two parts. I started in first grade and I was not a parent. I was young, I was fresh out of college, I was teaching first grade, and I was like, well, I'm a teacher, I know what I'm doing. And you very quickly realize that, hold on, like it's a different lens. There's not just you, it's also your families. And then when I was in early childhood, I say early childhood, I mean more of preschool.
Yeah.
At that, when I was teaching those kids, I was a mom. And it's a very different lens because now I had kids that were in school and I wanted to be in the classroom and I wanted to know what was going on and how could I help. But I also had that teacher lens as well as the mom lens. So being in the classroom with my 4 year olds and having those parents from all different backgrounds, all different cultures, different lenses, different paradigms that they come from, I was able to really understand that it's not just me and it's not just the kids. And so I often like to say that we're balancing on a three-legged stool, and
Mm.
it's always the parents, I'm sorry, it's always the students, it's always the teacher or the professional, and then we have the parents. And I believe that the parent leg is often very wobbly, and that's
Mm.
why the balance of the stool just isn't there, because we have so much training for teachers and we
Yeah.
have so much information and supports and curriculum for the children, and it's often our parents who are kind of like, well, what about me? And so we toss them a random handout. And there's parents that are in your classroom, and they're the ones that show up the first day and they're emailing you and they want to be involved. And then, like you said, there's the parents that just don't know. And so it's baby steps, and it's holding their hand, and it's loving them, and it's, hey, have you thought about, or did you know? And just by planting those seeds, they start to warm up
Mm.
and start to think like, okay, yeah, so tell me more.
Exactly. They're looking for a partner as well. And
Absolutely. Yes.
especially with so many single parents or,
Mm.
kids that are moving back and forth between homes, they're looking for partners to support their kids' learning. Um, so this is really interesting. We're going to talk today about the culture of parenting. And you and I have both lived through a few generations, right? We were raised by a certain decade culture. We had children during some different parenting movements. And now I think we are in the midst of another massive
Yeah.
mindset shift. So it's very challenging to put the words right or wrong. This is very subjective, but at the
Yes.
same time, where do you see these culture shifts and these identities that parents are attaching to themselves, right? I am a conscious parent. I
Yeah.
am a helicopter parent. I
Yeah.
am a gentle parent. How is that actually kind of taking away from their parenting?
They're losing their intuition.
Mm.
My biggest, I think, aha, and now that I'm watching my daughter parent, it's so interesting how, yes, is it helpful to have gentle parenting or conscious discipline or these different awarenesses about parenting? Absolutely. I feel that at the core we're losing our basic intuition as mothers, and it's so quick to just turn on social media and Google, how do I what do I do, instead of just pausing and just thinking, hey, like, what does my child need right now? Do they need some connection? Do they need a hug? Do they need some love? Do they need some fresh air? I think that's the basic. It's so easy to get caught in those dopamine hits of, okay, let me do this. And we forget, like, wait a second, at our core, we know we're mothers. We have that in there. And I think it gets masked a little bit.
Wow, that is so spot on. And I mean, what I'm hearing you say is that in choosing a parenting identity,
Mm.
we're losing our intuition.
Absolutely. We're pinching ourselves off. Knowledge is great. Knowledge is potential power. It's what you do with it that can perhaps lead to power.
Mm.
And so I think that when we begin to identify with just one thing, we pinch off all of the goodness and all of the other things that are out there, because a lot of them are, they're tools
Mm.
that can work and can be helpful, but at our core we have to just step back and remember that we know we have that voice in our heart that tells us. We just have sort of muted it out because, I mean, let's be honest, Cara, our culture is just so busy.
Yeah.
We're so wrapped up, and I get it, like, I mean, we can go down the whole rabbit hole of economy and things like that and trying to keep our heads above water. But at our basic, we need nurturing and love and safety. And
Yes.
we can give that. We don't need any tips or hacks or tricks or scripts to do that. We know that in our heart.
Yeah, I feel for these parents. I really do because they're inundated with a more based society in a way that we weren't.
No, we didn't have
And
that. Mm-mm.
and I get why picking a lane feels good. Because if you say all the options are my options, there's just too many options and it's too
Yeah.
much information. And one of the things that you and I share a core belief on, I hear you say the word core constantly, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
We are core for parenting over here.
Yes.
Um, is that raising children should be a child led experience. And that means that you have taken the time, therefore created the space to observe who your children are.
Mhm.
That is the guide for
Yeah.
you, right? I just got off a coaching session with a mom who has twins, and how she shows up for each of them is very different because they're very different children,
Mhm.
and her energy has to match one's need versus the other's need for independence. And so
Mhm.
she's shifting a lot, and it's a lot of work, but she's not using any out tools to do it. She's just assessing
Yeah.
what's up with my kid right now. Is it emotional safety they need? Great, let's meet that need. Is it an independent skill they're building? Cool, let's make that happen. And you're right, parents don't have a lot of education around how to do that.
Well, there's just not like let's be like, where do you go?
Right.
So you go to your pediatrician, and I have several pediatrician friends who say, Gretchen, no, no, they don't teach us about child development like that. They don't teach us about skill building. They don't teach us about how do we get kids to have emotional regulation. Their job, they're trained to save lives,
Right.
to nurture the health and well-being of your children. Okay, so where do you go? Who do you go to? You typically don't have anyone until there's an issue, and then you're going down all of these different, getting on waiting lists. And we have mile long wait lists for SLPs or OTs or
Oh
PTs or
yeah.
whatever types of therapies. And so I just keep saying we need a program.
Yeah.
That is basic parenting, that people can be trained in, following your intuition and knowing about how to teach emotional regulation. That's one of the biggest questions I get from parents
Yeah.
is, I wasn't raised, Gretchen. My parents didn't raise me with emotional regulation. They didn't know how to do it, and now I don't know how to do it, and I need help. And I think if you step back and look at our culture, we are dysregulated adults raising dysregulated children, and that cycle, that systemic cycle, has to change. I can go
Absolutely.
down a whole that could be a whole nother episode.
So, I've been doing a lot of research around this and a lot of thinking about exactly what you just said. That the cycles need to break
Hmm.
and be redefined. The how is the hard part.
Yeah.
What have you noticed in your work with parents and, just the littles in
Yeah.
general about their post-COVID selves? Have you noticed that kids and parents have been able to recapture any type of grounded version of themselves, or is everybody still kind of in reactive survival mode?
I would, my experience is that it's still very reactive and it's survival, and there's just a lot of fear. And
Yes.
so it's easier to, fear feels safe. When you were talking about picking a lane, we pick a lane because it feels safe.
Yeah.
And if we just kind of look over the other way, we're like, whoa, I don't know about that. And then, it does all that to our nervous system, and our bodies feel dysregulated. So I think there's always that looming, like, well, what if this happens again? Like,
Mm.
I just want to make sure, maybe I don't know what to do. And so we live in this heightened state of kind of being afraid. And I see it in terms of like a lot of children, it's happening on accident, but it's just learned helplessness. It's just that fear of like, well, let me just do it for you. I'm just going to do
Mm.
it for you. So what we do is we take away their self-efficacy. We take away their ability to like stand up and be like, well, no, hold on, I can do this by myself. And as you know, that's learned and wired into the brain at a very young age. So I think we are still seeing the effects of COVID five
Yeah.
years out.
Yeah, and as an educator, I feel like the education epidemic is just beginning,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Our COVID babies are kindergartners now,
Hmm. Hmm.
and
Yeah, and I
here we
think,
go.
yeah, and the other piece too is because of that, behaviors in the classroom are just insurmountable. Good teachers are leaving the profession.
Yep.
Young teachers are leaving the profession because behaviors are out of control, and not because we have bad parents. We're talking loving, kind, good parents, but who just don't know their need. We're, it's that resource piece that's missing, that education, that you don't know what you don't know piece
Yeah.
that
So
is missing.
this is a complicated culture
Yeah.
that we're talking about, because the other thing that I'm witnessing, and I bet you are too, is that parents are having kids a little later, and they're coming to parenthood with some real knowledge behind them and some intentionality about how they want to parent and the type of human they want to raise. And there's this beautiful nature shift going on. And so what are they up against here? Because if the culture is just moving and our society is moving in such kind of a spiral experience, and they're entering saying, I would like to do this calmly and intentionally and purposefully, it feels like people want that, and it also feels like the world's a little bit stacked against them right now.
I love that you said intentionality. That is one of my favorite words with parenting. When parents show up with intention, it changes everything. And I was listening to someone, she was talking about how she's in her mid to late 30s, and she said that her and her husband have spent hours upon hours upon hours debating whether or not they wanted to have children.
Hmm.
And what was interesting to me was just that I don't know that there's that much intentionality around having children. When do I want to bring kids into this world? It's easy to just have them and then we get them and it's like, well, what do we do now? But to actually be to make that intentional decision to not have them. And you're right. I'm seeing a number of, I don't want to say older because 35 isn't old, but in
No,
terms, in terms of having a baby, I think you're labeled as like a geriatric pregnancy if
it's
you're
true.
35. But having that knowledge, you're right, they do. It is kind of like you're butting up against, well, wait a second, the world wants you to do this. This is the culture of parenting. We're just going to manage the moments and we're just going to, we might be adding fuel to the fire because we don't know any better and we're following this script. And then you've got these other parents who are like, wait a second, hold on. That's not how I want to do this. I'm thinking about, a nature school or, doing things differently. And I, I don't, I think that's going to be huge. I think that's going to
Mm.
be really huge and a really positive shift in our parenting culture.
I agree with you. I mean, I live in Vermont, right? So nature is all around me.
Yes.
And I did leave for college and I left further for grad school. But when I got married, I knew, okay, I want to return to that home base where it's a lovely space to raise kids. Not everybody has that, but we have access to those things. We can create nature experiences wherever we are. But more than anything, that true nature of, like, I keep coming back to it, that who that child is. I don't know if you caught the first the episode I did with my daughter, but I read to her my personalized parenting mission statement that I
I didn't see
wrote
that.
when I was pregnant with our first. And
Oh,
it's the value system, it's the characteristics, it's like the North Star guidepost of who I wanted to raise. And it helped me make intentional decisions during hard moments in order to get there. And so intentionality is very important to me, and she'd never heard it before. She didn't know I even wrote it.
oh,
And so to read this to my 20-year-old and then have her reflect back that she believes she really is all those things was such a special moment
there had to have been tears. I imagine there had to
for
have
me
been
at least.
tears and goosebumps. And that's really magical. I love that
Yeah.
you did that. I
Yeah.
really love that.
Yeah, and I just really encourage all parents. It's part of my program actually, is that the first step is we write it or they write it. And I encourage all parents, anyone who's listening, whether you're in a partnership that you feel like you can echo each other's vision or not, just sit down and write yours, because the world will infiltrate you. The world
Mm.
will test your value system. The world will ask you to compromise. The world will make you believe things about what kids can and can't or should or shouldn't do are true, when really, deep down that's not what you want. So you've got to have it anchored. And so that's just the path that we chose, and it's worked really well for me.
Well, it's like you said, it's your North Star. I think we do everything in our life like that. We think about our health like that. We think about our careers like that. We think about where we want to live or what vacations we want to do or take. But do we, as parents, sit down with that intentionality? And I mean, I don't know. I would say probably not as often as we would like to hear that our parents
No.
do that. So the fact that you're teaching that is amazing, and you did it. Like
Hmm.
you did that with your own family, and to now see it, you kind of look. You had a recipe. You started with your recipe, and now you're looking at your finished product. And you're like, oh, I didn't do too bad.
Yeah, just watching them be adults is just such a beautiful
Isn't it
gift.
amazing?
Yeah,
It's such a gift.
it
Such a
is.
gift.
And I kind of want to wrap here by saying that personally, I feel like parents have been sold a very rotten bill of goods, right? They are told to be afraid, they are told to worry, they are told to be anxious before their baby even gets here. Watch
Mm.
out for those toddler years. They're going to be terrible, and I read that you said something really similar, and I love it. You said, "I believe we've misunderstood the real purpose of toddlerhood."
Yeah, absolutely. It got slapped with fake news. It is not the terrible twos. And then I hear they go into like a three-nager and all this other. I just wish we would stop the labeling, and I wish we would
Mm.
understand. What we need to understand is that the toddler years are magical. It is such
Mm.
an opportunity for us to wire so many important connections and skills for our little ones. And just, I think, taking off that label of, hey, it's going to be the terrible twos, doesn't that feel like, if you can just throw that away and burn it, doesn't that just make your shoulders be like, oh, really? Thank you. I didn't know that. Thank you. Just the ease
Yeah.
that I think so many parents are looking for.
Yes, they need a little permission. And, I encourage them to swap it out with another T word. I say they're the teachable twos,
Yes,
because that's what it's for. And I'd love to have you back on the show to talk about that brain wiring, to talk about this really cool system and this way of visualizing it that you've come up with. Would that work for you?
I would love to. I would love to continue. Yes,
Oh,
thank
that's
you.
fantastic. Well, Until then, you all know what to do. My toddler tribe out there, stay mindful and proactive and go write your parenting mission statement. And if you don't know how, send me a message until our next episode, as we transform the toddler years. Gretchen, welcome back to the show. Today we're talking all about the toddler brain, and I'm so excited.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk about this. This is my wheelhouse. This is my jam. I love it. It's so good. So good for
Yes.
parents.
Yeah. So if you're tapping into this episode and Gretchen isn't not a familiar name to you, then you missed an episode. So you should go back and listen to Gretchen's first episode with us, which was more about the psychological components of parenting in this day, in this age, how we choose with intention. And that'll ground you to get ready for this more academic conversation. So, Gretchen, this idea that we are the architect of our children's brain during the first 3 to 5 years of their life is being talked about more and more and more, specifically in teacher academic circles. But parents are starting to key into this is real too.
Absolutely. It's, there's so many good organizations like the 0 to 3, and um, there's so much information that's starting, like you said, it used to be just for teachers. And now we have such a culture of parenting where it's like, well, hold on, I want to know about this too. Like, this affects me. Um, I like to talk about a three-legged stool. It's always going to be our children. It's always going to be the professional in their life, whether it's a teacher or a program director or daycare provider, and then there's always parents. And I believe that the children and the teacher leg are pretty strong with supports and resources and trainings. It's that parent leg that tends to be a little wobbly. And I think we're starting to head in the right direction with more parent empowerment, more parent resources, not just handouts and milestones, but
Mm.
real information that parents are like, oh, wait a second, that's what that's for. I get it. Like, this makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I I also feel like it can be overwhelming. Like, we're teachers. And so when people say to us, here, let's crack the hood on a tiny toddler brain and let's talk about the neuroscience and let's look at like the cause and effect in the brain, we're all about it. We're like, where's the textbook?
Yeah,
Tell me
get me
what to
sign
watch.
up.
Like, I'm in it. When I have those conversations or I start those conversations with parents, they go, first of all, it's shock. Like,
Mhm.
wait a minute, that's all happening behind this beautiful face invisibly. And like everything I say affects it and everything I do affects it. And uh-oh, I'm not sure I'm qualified anymore. Like there's a fear that comes after the shock that says, this is a way bigger job than I thought it was. How do
Yes.
I know if I'm doing it right?
Well, you said something really interesting that I feel that I a lot of parents say to me, but I'm not a teacher. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a. I don't know how do I teach this to my kids, and I think that you just need to take those classes. You are a teacher. You will always be your child's first teacher. You don't have to have any type of degree or book that gives you that. And I think sometimes that paralyzes parents because they think they have to do it a certain way and they have to teach it all. And well, okay, but how do I do this? And I have to teach. And I think that when you said that, it just really is, yes, we are our child's first teacher, but not always in the way that we think we have to be.
Ooh, all right. Now we're going to get to the good stuff because yes, parents think that if they take on role of teacher, then that means that they are teaching their children skills. But the version of skills that I hear prioritized are the cognitive skills, ABCs, one, two, threes, colors, numbers. And I said in our last episode, I feel like parents are just sold such a rotten bill of goods. And in this, it's identical to this because they think they're doing what they need to do to set their child up for future success. But that's actually, of the four readiness skills, it's the one that we should focus on last.
Because if you don't have the other ones, It doesn't matter. It,
Yeah.
it the academics will always come. I've never met like, a 10-year-old that doesn't know 1 plus 1, or can't
Mhm.
identify a shape.
Right.
I think what my perception and my understanding and the way that I've come to understand the lens of parenting is it's just outdated.
Mm.
We've moved forward in our parenting. So, we think back in the early like 1920s, 1950s, it was all about control. We had to control our kids. We had to manage the moment. If they cried, we were viewed as bad parents. And then we fast forward and, now, yes, we understand that they're emotional beings and we understand the importance through gentle parenting that, yes, we need to be calm and regulate. But that's like not the whole part. Like parents are left off. Okay, well, I'm calm, but now what am I supposed to do? I know I'll teach ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, and so we're moving in the right direction. It's just going a little bit slower than I think our children are needing.
Absolutely. Wow, there's a nice little fly that's joining our podcast today. So what I love is because there's programs out there that teach the regulation, right? And those are the conscious pieces, the me, how do I show up? And you have this thing called Park the Skill, but it's a brain based. So we're not talking about ABCs and 1, 2, 3s here. What other skills need to be built in the brain?
Oh, well, I'm so glad you asked. I love this. I I basically reverse engineered my years in the classroom. So what I kept seeing happen in the classroom year after year were just wonderful families, families of all backgrounds, well intentioned. Kids are coming to school and they can write their name, but my goodness, they couldn't ask for help if they needed to. They had trouble separating. They could not problem solve, couldn't figure out how to get a backpack on, and then didn't know how to even ask for someone to get a backpack on. And so I started talking to parents and really understood what was going on. And parents like, well, Gretchen, I didn't know. Like, I didn't know I was supposed to teach potty training. I thought you were going to do that. Or I didn't know I was supposed to problem solving. Like, what is that? Wait, what? Confidence? Independent? I don't know how to do all this. So I reverse engineered my years of experience with parents. And so what I developed is something called Park the Skill. And what it is we need to imagine that our children's brain is just a giant parking lot. So when they're born, the parking lot is empty. And every little thing we do with repetition, because what fires together wires together. We know that about the brain. And so that's kind of how habits form and we get grooves in the brain. And that's how habits start to show up and our life patterns become ingrained in us. So I developed something called can do skills. And I like to think of can do skills as I can. I can be independent. I can be a problem solver. I can handle my big emotions. And so what we do as parents is what I teach is through play. Nothing
Mm.
fancy, parents. It's nothing fancy. It's the toys we have in 10 minutes a day, and we teach our children how to build these skills and wire them in the brain. And it takes connection and repetition and practice. And so when you do that, what happens is when they're a baby and you start reading the same book over
Yeah.
all repetitively, it starts to create a parking spot in the brain. So now they're like 1 and they're 18 months, and now we're starting to, oh well, now we've got some we've got some lines in our spaces. And then when we get to be toddlers, we have signs, we have parking signs, assigned parking. So for example, one of them might be emotional regulation. So you think your toddler is hitting to be naughty and you want to grab their hand, we don't hit. Well,
Mm.
what happens is their body starts to feel dysregulated. And so what happens is their brain sends out the hitting car. And that hitting car is just going, it doesn't know where to park because it's never learned where to park. Well, when you stop it by saying we don't hit and you take their hand, well, now the car is just left in the lot. It hasn't parked anywhere because we haven't taught them to park it into the space of emotional regulation. And we do that consistently through play and connection. And that's how it gets wired into our toddler's brain. And it goes for all the skills. And so that's why if we aren't intentional in the toddler years to park those skills, the lot gets jammed up. And then that's why we have first graders and second graders and
Mm.
teenagers. And the brain is this wonderful, wonderful thing that has neuroplasticity. So we can rewire and remold, but we got to clean up those cars now because the lot's all jammed up. And so we do that by forming new patterns and new behaviors. So I love talking about this because while it sounds like fancy, it's so simple. And it's
Mm.
just how all of our brains learn and are wired.
Yeah, it really is the most complicated, simple thing on the planet. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
it really is, and it's why in a lot of the pedagogies, less is more, right? Less toys
Absolutely.
equals more attention and more creation and more imagination, and we wanna be turning the brain on instead of clogging it up. Um, in my research for the book, I had such a great time exploring this idea that dysregulated kids are not available to learn, and that learning happens in a different part of the brain. It's a very specific parking lot where learning happens. And to access it, all those other parking spots, to use your analogy, have to be met and filled. And so, last time we talked about the fact society right now is still very much in a heightened state of anxiety and lashing out in survival mode and fear. And from those places, learning is hard.
Very hard.
Yeah.
Which then it creates a loop. So learning is hard, and because it's hard and we don't have the skills, then we act out and then we have behaviors, and then that just puts up more walls, more bricks, and it's just this cycle that just becomes harder to get out of because now it's becoming a pattern and a
Yes,
habit.
I call it the trigger trap reaction cycle.
Love that
We
triggered. Yeah,
just, the
it
child
is.
triggers us, we trigger the child, and then we're off to the races. So, how do you, through play, facilitate? Can you give us one example of like just a calm, engaging play moment where a parent would be thinking about the skill they want to teach, but then doing it at the child's level with the toys the child has chosen?
I really am so happy you brought this up because as I've been doing the work and learning how children learn, what's interesting is I will have parents that say, Gretchen, how do I? So my toddler is throwing their food. How do I get them? I need to know how. Just tell me exactly how I teach them not to do this. Like, okay, well, we have skills. Everything behavior is communication, and behind every behavior, we're just having a skill that's under construction. So the beautiful thing about play and the beautiful thing about what I teach is using the toys you have in 10 minutes a day. Your child really does it all. You really show up with just a quiet space with 10 minutes and toys you already have. And I created something called the 7 pillars for play, which are the 7 different types of toys that children need exposure to. You probably, most likely, I'm almost going to guarantee you have them in your home. So, for example, one of the pillars is pretend,
Hmm.
and it's sitting for 10 minutes with your child and you're playing pretend. That's it. They lead. It's always about child led play. That's the other beautiful thing. You know, we think it has to be complicated. We think it has to be hard. We hear the word emotional regulation and we think, oh
Mm.
my gosh, okay, there is just no way I'm going to be able to do this. But the magic happens when you put away your phone, you turn off the TV, you just maybe have some quiet music in the background, you've got a baby doll or a puppet, and you're playing pretend kitchen. And oh no, the we're having troubles getting the baby doll dressed. And so now we're feeling a little bit of frustration. And in the moment, you're just saying, oh my goodness, how do you think we can get this on our baby doll? We know what to say. It's inside of us. We don't need fancy scripts. We just need to think about how we would approach it as an adult, and then we just say it to our little ones. So
Mm.
it's never really hard. It's just taking off that lens of like they're naughty, they're bad, and now I got to teach, and I got to make it real. I have to make sure that they are going to learn this. And really, it's just 10 minutes a day of just focusing and being intentional and asking them and not doing it for them. It's
Yeah.
asking them, let them lead. Like, how do you think, or how do you feel, or what should we? Or it's knowing blocks is another pillar for play. Blocks. It's knowing the tower. You know, if they put that next block up, you know that tower is going to collapse. And oh my goodness, maybe they're going to throw a block or they're going to freak out. And you just watch the tower fall and you say, oh my goodness, what just happened? In that moment, you've taught them to pause. Right there,
Mm.
I talk about pause, process, and respond. Our littles don't have that yet. And so we model pause, process, and respond. And that is truly the power of just being intentional with our little ones.
It is. Oh, I love that. I love that. And I think one of the reasons why parents attach so committedly to the ABCs, one, two, threes, colors, and numbers is because they're quantifiable, right?
Absolutely.
We get to see the fruit of our labor and we go, oh, okay, this is working. We're meeting benchmarks. And that's what the adult cognitive brain likes.
Yes, we like to
um,
check it off.
we really do. We really do. But the way that you're describing this is lovely because there's a new set of skills in the game. Yes, they're softer skills. They're harder to quantify, but you can feel them. You know when you're in it by feeling it. And if this world needs anything, right now it needs to return to what it feels like to be in relationship with somebody else.
Absolutely. Hmm.
It's so beautiful. I
And it's so
love,
true. It's so
yeah,
true. It's and that's why, gentle parenting is so great too, because it's about that connection piece. But then it's not just the connection, it's connection and the
yes,
intention and the moments
yeah,
together and the play and the wiring.
yeah. Yeah, and it's why, everything does kind of need a label. Otherwise, people don't know which way they want to go. But it's why I describe my approach as collaborative parenting,
Yes.
because I believe that consciousness, like at its core, if you deconstruct the word, it's a solo experience.
Hmm.
You can't consciously be connected to someone. They have to be in their conscious availability mode. And then the connection is made through collaboration. And so I want to be a team. I want to be a team with the kids in my classroom. I want to be a teammate with my children. And because my kids felt like they were part of the team, that they had a voice, and that the answer and the boundaries would often not align with their idea, but their idea was always wanting, I always wanted to hear it. We were able to
Yes.
move through kind of those more challenging parts of emotional development that were not the toddler years, they were the tween years, right? And then the teen years were not hard in my house. And I don't know why I'm whispering that. I should be shouting it. They were not hard in my house
Mine
because we
either.
had
Yeah.
because we set the groundwork when they were toddlers.
But that's like the biggest secret. If we could just That's the secret. If you make those first few years count, it's really just smooth sailing. And we raise daughters. I have daughters, you have daughters, and everybody's like, "Oh, you just wait." And it was, yeah, were there a couple bumps? Yeah, as to be expected, and that's how you learn and you grow and you shift, but not compared to some stories I've heard. But when you're
Absolutely.
intentional and you understand and you have just that basic roadmap
Yeah.
without feeling so much pressure, it really makes it kind of fun, doesn't it?
It was so fun, and I
Yeah.
have so many stories that I can't wait to get permission to share.
Yeah.
Um, we're a permission to post
Yeah.
household, like, nothing goes out to the public eye unless I get approval,
Yep.
because that's part of the respectful relationship that exists between myself and my kids. And the same is true as a podcaster with stories, but someday when they are old enough and ready to release those into the world, I can't wait to share them with all of
You'll get
you.
that signed. Free pass, mom. Go for it.
Yes, go for it. Um, yeah, because, when your child calls you up from a public location to say, I'm thinking about making this choice and I'm really not sure if I should do it, you know that you are the most trusted person in their life. And parents, that's what Gretchen and I want you to know. Your
Yes.
job in the first 3 years is to make them feel like you respect them and they can trust you and they can believe your words because you lovingly follow through when you set a boundary. And if you do that and you talk about it with them, you're golden.
Easy peasy. It really is. It really is.
Yeah. And if it sounds scary and overwhelming because it's not a familiar way of interacting with people that are that much smaller than you, we get it. And it's
Yeah.
why there's so many people out there doing what we do. And I love bringing people onto the show who serve the same population I do, because there are people out there that resonate with how I teach. And there's people that resonate with how you teach. And there's people that resonate with my former guests. And I want all of you to find your person, because if all of you do that, you do the work and then you break the cycle, and this
Yeah.
generation's going to save us.
It's partnership. You had mentioned that word earlier, and it really is. Everybody wants to be seen and heard and valued and understood, even our littles. And we just need to do it in a way that is in their language. And
Mm.
a lot of times I'll get parents that will message me, well, Gretchen, I have been explaining to my 2-year-old for weeks now that we don't bite. Yes, I see you. I think what your intention is great, but words don't teach. Not to our
Mhm.
littles. That's just talk therapy. They don't hear that. What they hear is play. Their language is play. Their language is, when we're connecting with them. And so you've called it a toddler tribe, and I love that. And we're all pieces of the same puzzle that are here to support and love and nurture, because let's be honest, our children depend on it. Like,
Yeah.
that's the future waiting for us to. You don't have to do this alone. There is a tribe out there, and we're all here to love and come alongside
Yes.
you. And so I love the work you're doing, and I'm very
Mm.
grateful. Thank you for having me as a guest. Um, you and I can just talk for days on this
I
stuff.
know. It's true. There are some
Just our
people, it's
love.
it's very special.
It is.
And
It's very
it's
special.
it's the shared vision, and
Yes,
that's very
absolutely.
important. All right. So, to my amazing toddler tribe out there, if you would like to learn more about how Gretchen works with you, then just hop over to her website. We have it linked right in the show notes for you. You don't have to remember how to spell anything, just go click a button. Um, and be sure to, if nothing else, just sit with yourself after you turn off this podcast and ask yourself a few of these guiding questions. Find out who it is you want to be as a parent and how you want to relate to your kids, and then go seek the people that can help you do it, because Gretchen's right. This world is not going to change unless we take the reins and do something about it. So, again, thank you for your time, Gretchen. We so appreciate you.
Yes, thank you again for having me.
And to all of that amazing group out there, please, you know what to do. Stay very mindful and get proactive until our next episode as we transform the toddler years.